This week's video, because this teaching is so important, I really want you to get the benefit of understanding why and how to apply the teaching of no one to change but self. From Out of This World, a book by Neville Goddard, I do bring in my own experiences and my teachings from a greater perspective that will help you understand Neville's work. I break down the concepts and I also help you understand these teachings so that when you apply them, they can make far more sense to you. No one to change but self has a deeper meaning, and I will go into that. We'll talk about what it means to free yourself from sin and why that's important, and what it means in terms of sin, what it means to free yourself and free others. I'll also touch on some of the mystical experiences that Neville brings as learnings to us, and how and why you would start to experience these mystical experiences when you apply the practices and the teachings. We'll also be talking about why it's important and what the acronym F.L.Y means. So if you stay to the end, you'll actually understand what no one to change but self is about. When we operate the law of consciousness, we have no one to change but self. Because the problem is trying to change the outside, trying to change something that is external. In my previous videos on as above, so below, as within, so without, I touch on and I go into the deeper meaning of why no one to change but self then has to be a central teaching that you keep in mind. Because if you do not actually change the self that is the operant power, you will not see the results that you want. And you may end up being frustrated in terms of the results that you are actually achieving. So if you've been working, trying to apply the teachings yourself, or you've maybe perhaps taken a course or two and it's just not working out, it is probably because you haven't really looked at the hidden self. And in terms of the hidden self, I speak about how you change this in terms of your self-concept. It's another one of my videos that you can look through and work on your self-concept, which is really your body of belief in terms of how you see yourself, how you think others see you, how you see others, and actually what you believe of the world. So no one to change but self is really a greater all-encompassing teaching. It is about the law of assumption. It is about the way in which imagination works. So if you are not achieving your manifestations, if your desires are not coming into realization, it is because you are creating what you are conscious of being within, and that's the self. And that's the self that we must look at, because no one to change but the self is really about what are you conscious of being within. Also, taking the right action. I will be talking a little bit about Neville's experiences, the mystical experiences that he had when he dropped into the space of intense meditation, and what it actually means as well. Because as you unfold along your path and along this journey of getting to know the self and to apply the teachings of the law of assumption, you are going to encounter certain experiences in your dream state and when you drop into the theta stage, which is to bring yourself into that space of connecting with the dimensionally larger world. And let's start out with what this first sentence in the opening paragraph of no one to change but self. And so we start out with a very key statement that Neville makes in the chapter, no one to change but self. No one to change but self from Out of This World. And it's chapter 4. And for their sakes, I sanctify myself, that they might also be sanctified through the truth. Now, to sanctify something is to actually set it apart, to declare as holy, to consecrate it, to make it sacred, and to also free from sin or to purify. So what is it that we're actually looking at here? And here's how this sentence breaks down. And for their sakes, I sanctify, or we replace sanctify with, I free myself from sin. If you haven't seen a previous video or you don't understand what it means in terms of sin, sin is to miss the mark. Now, if you were to miss the mark on anything, what would you do? So I hope that your answer would be, I would try again, because that is what the meaning of sin is. It is to miss the mark that we were originally aiming for. And so when you miss the mark, you try again. Do not give up. If your desire does not come to fruition immediately, stay true to it. Your faith and your acceptance is what is required. That they also might be sanctified through the truth. And if we look at this, that they, the others in your life, might also be freed from sin through the truth. So your part in this, freeing yourself from sin, that which is not true, which is not in alignment for you, not only does it free yourself, it frees others. Now remember the frustrations that can come about with not achieving your desires and not achieving your wishes. Do not give up on yourself. This is why no one to change but self is so key. It is for you to apply the law of assumption, to persist in the truth of what it is that you desire for yourself. And you are also instrumental in what you can do for others. Now, very important then, when you are true to your desires, when you are true to your aim, something to understand is we do not have these desires, which are really states of consciousness, which are seeking embodiment through us. We cannot have a desire that does not exist as potential within us in our nature. So I'd love for you to expand on this and realize, look upon your desires as words of God, words of your imagination. Every word or desire is a promise that you are seeking to fulfill. There's nothing wrong with having desires. Where we get it wrong is when there is attachment, when we have a judgment, when we may have a conflict. So the big part of this is to understand that everything starts as and with a desire. Nothing in this world was not first a desire that was not imagined. Your desires are states of consciousness that are seeking to become real, that are seeking to come into the reality, into your outer world. Neville had these mystical experiences, and in this particular chapter, he talks about it. And he says, once in an idle interval at sea, I meditated on the perfect state and wondered what I would be were I of two pure eyes to behold iniquity. Now, when he entered meditation, in this intense meditation, he contemplated the idea of perfection. Now, to contemplate the idea of perfection is to contemplate perfect state of God, which is to see beyond sin. And I've mentioned sin is literally to miss the mark. Because if we are able to see all things and see them with purity and beyond judgment, so to see these experiences for what they provided and not to get caught up in the meaning, because in the meaning is where we attribute and find suffering. We become the person, we keep that suffering of not having or lack or judging an experience to be wrong, evil, whatever that might be. Now, what Neville has said to us is when he contemplated the state of perfection, he became so lost in this meditation that he then found himself being lifted above the dark environment of his senses. And it was so intense that he felt himself as a being of fire, and he was dwelling in this body of air. So now he's lifted out of the physical body. And he said he heard these voices as a heavenly chorus. And it's an exaltation of those who had been conquerors in a conflict with death were singing. And they were saying, he is risen, he is risen. And intuitively, he knew they meant him. Now, this experience was about rising above the human condition of judgment, of condemnation, of seeing the wrongness in the world. And he said that was the one scene. And then he saw. Now we see that fire is a creation. Fire brings things into creation. It is that energy. It is the spark of life. He then says he sees himself walking in the night, and he comes across a scene that could have been the ancient pool of Bethesda, where in the space he sees impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, not moving, waiting for the moving of the water, but they were waiting for him. And now what Neville is talking about is giving life to desires, his desires. He comes near, and without thought or effort on his part, he sees one after the other desires that had no life. Without any thought or effort, they are as if they come to life, as if molded by the magician of the beautiful. Whatever was missing, their hands, their feet, their eyes, the limbs, are created out of the invisible. They come through from the invisible reservoir, which is the dimension in a larger world, by imagination, by the contemplation, and they were all made perfect. And what he hears is, "It is finished." Then the scene dissolves and he awakes. This was simply by the contemplation of the state of perfection. Who would he be when he contemplated, "If I were to see things only through the perfection of God, if my eyes were God's eyes?" And so to just draw your attention to this and to understand that when we focus on the state of perfection, the perfect state through pure eyes, the contemplation of how we would see iniquity. And iniquity is beyond, it's actually beyond sin. The next graphic will actually give you a lot more of a punch around this. It can mean wickedness, evil, immorality, but it's a violation of God's law. It's a violation of the law of imagination. Now, this violation is a bit more serious because it is where a man who knows his duty and he's under obligation to do it, but he chooses not to. For example, you could have a high-ranking officer in government, the military, etc., and they know very well that it is their obligation to maybe protect the downtrodden, protect the weak, and they choose not to. You could have a public servant in office, and they have the opportunity to employ funds to uplift the community, to uplift those who are impoverished, and yet they choose to funnel those funds into their back pocket. And therefore, iniquity is something far more deeper than sin. It is nefarious, evil, wicked, immorality. Now, what Neville contemplated, what if I were to see iniquity, no matter how bad it was, to see it through the eyes of perfection and the perfect state, so that he did not judge it, he did not condemn it. And that is what we are really looking at, to look through these pure eyes and not to judge or condemn anything to be immoral or grossly unfair, which goes against God's law, goes against the immorality code, etc. Neville said he had been so completely absorbed with that idea for a while that he contemplated this high purpose, and for that moment identified himself with God, to see beyond sin, and could see himself as God, to see things as pure, be without judgment. Because when we come to this, we see there is no other way to bring about an outer perfection than by transforming ourselves to see the inner perfection. Because when we can, in our deep contemplation, see how we become that which we would like to be, we now marry and we bring about the union between our desire and our consciousness. We can fashion the vision that we would love to achieve in harmony with our inner nature. Now, that's the action that we can take. What is it worth to you to have the life of your dreams, to actually have the kind of transformation that we know is possible? And before you answer that, I want to ask you this question. How much do you desire to achieve your dreams? If you are to do that, no one to change but self. First, love yourself. Remember this acronym, FLY. Remind yourself, because when we succeed in the transformation of self, the world actually will transform before your eyes as though it were magic, but it really isn't magic, because you know that the law of assumption is how you create. And if you are to reshape your life, if you want your life to be that life of your desires, and if you are to reshape your life, bring your life into alignment where your desires and consciousness are one. Now, if you are to have that amazing relationship, you must first love yourself enough to become the person who is lovable. Do not negotiate on how you see yourself. If you know that there is something that is not in alignment with being in a loving relationship, change it, transform it. Because in that transformation is how you will attract to yourself that which you desire. If you're seeking a promotion or you're wanting a new job which will take you to new heights in your career, become the person who is in demand, who will be sought after, who is a natural fit that the next company or even your current employer does not want anyone else but you. You love yourself so much that you already see yourself as the only candidate, the only person. You value yourself so much that you know that you are in high demand. If you wish to have this amazing group of friends, you've got to see yourself and accept that you are the best friend ever. If you wish to have this wonderful family, you've got to see yourself as being the best parent or the best child that is accepted, appreciated, loved. So it all comes down to how you see yourself. How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be experienced? And you bring that into union in your imaginal state. And when you drop into the imaginal state, you must already be it, like we discussed earlier on in terms of Neville speaking about what would it be like to see through perfect eyes, to never judge another, to not judge the self. And that's what we are ultimately doing. So in terms of what we've discussed, in terms of no one to change but self, remember first, it's an intention. You have that desire. Write it down. What is your desire? When you have that desire, what are the actions that you will take? And these are not actions in the physical world, by the way. This is what would you imagine is going to be taking place in your imaginal world. What would you see as the logical action? And you bring that into your imaginal scene. That is the only action you take. You construct the imaginal scene of being the person who has, for example, the partner. You are that loving, caring partner first. And in your imaginal scene, you construct the scene in terms of how you would engage with your partner. How would they feel loved, cherished, appreciated? What would they be saying to you in terms of how they love you, how much they appreciate you? And the practice is to ensure that you revise any experiences that do not align with your desire. You make sure your inner speech is aligned to your desire and your self-concept. Who are you? Who are you? Who would you like to become? And you practice that consistently. You will always go back to your desire and How does your inner speech and your self-concept come into union with that desire? When it's consistent, when you are persistent in this, it becomes a new habit. You are now becoming the person who is the lovable, caring partner. And when that's a habit, it simply becomes who you are. So please remember this: no one to change itself. So comment below, what is one action you know you can apply from this week's lesson on no one to change but self? And remember, you can post one desire or one wish that you'd love to see fulfilled, so that all who visit this video, all who see this video, can also see your wish fulfilled as well. You can actually become a person who has their desires. And not just has the desires, but actually creates the life that they've always, always, always desired and wanted, and they wish fulfilled. You live from that desire in imagination before it comes into your 3D outer reality. In my next video, we will take the teachings a lot deeper in terms of no one to change but self, because the stakes are too high for you to stay limited in your blocks and your challenges. Now, if you would like to consider booking a call with me so that we can explore how I could help you to achieve your desires, how I can help you to refine and redesign your life, or perhaps help you with learning how to revise or change your self-concept and construct an inner speech that will bring you in alignment with your desires, please feel free to drop me an email and we can chat. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and let's grow consciousness together.